In this lecture, we'll discuss mock test 9 solutions, right? So we have 20 questions here. We start with our question number 1. The question number 1 says, number of diagonals of a regular octagon that are parallel to at least one side of that polygon, okay? That is your quantity A. Quantity B, the number of diagonals that are of that regular octagon that are not parallel to any of its sides. Understand? So you have to find the answer. Now, all this mock series, right, mock quant mock course having 10 mock tests. Each and every question is very conceptual, right? So all these mocks are very carefully framed questions, right? So these are of high standard. Actually these are for 170 target people, right? So who are targeting for perfect 170, these mocks are very apt for them, right? So you'll be learning a lot of new concepts here. Now this question number 1, I explained the concept in detail in our geometry course. So just to give you a heads up about the geometry course, the geometry course comprises of 25% of your quant syllabus, right? So geometry is not about just one chapter. Geometry course has geometry, mensuration and coordinate geometry as well. So all these 3 chapters are covered. If you see that course, the course duration itself for 3 chapters, you are having 40 hours plus video coverage. Understand? So video lectures are made for 40 hours plus, and we have discussed more than 600 questions on these 3 chapters alone, right? So the geometry course is a complete conceptual package, right? So once you take that course and start watching those videos, I guarantee you need not solve any other book. Directly you go to the exam and you can directly attempt your questions. That too, what happens is, after watching this course for 40 hours and 600 plus questions, your speed, accuracy and confidence levels will increase drastically. Understand? So that is about that geometry course. And now for this particular question, I'll explain the concept again here. See this. Now, first of all, if there is a regular polygon, okay, regular polygon will have n sides, right? So if these n sides, number of sides of a regular polygon is odd, if it is odd, okay, if number of sides is odd, then there won't be any diagonal which is non-parallel to any of its side. Understand? So you will have parallel diagonals, right? So number of diagonals that are parallel to at least one of the sides of this polygon will be n itself, right? Now number of non-parallel diagonals will be 0. So what do I mean by this? Example, I'll take a I'll take a pentagon which is having 5 sides. 5 is nothing but odd number, right? So odd number. So what are the diagonals here? Suppose if I take this diagonal like this, what happens is, here it may look odd, but then if you draw the figure properly, what happens is this diagonal will be parallel to this diagonal. Understand? Now if you draw this diagonal will be parallel to this diagonal. Understand? So at least every diagonal will definitely be parallel to one of the sides of the polygon, right? So there won't be any diagonal which is non-parallel. So in that cases, whenever your n is odd, your non-parallel diagonals will be 0 and parallel diagonals will be n. So in a pentagon, what you can say is, number of diagonals parallel to any one of its sides is nothing but 5. Now second case, if n is equal to even, then number of diagonals that are parallel to at least one of its side will be n by 4 into n minus 4. Number of non-parallel diagonals will be n by 4 into n minus 2. That's it. Now example, if you take a hexagon is having n is equal to 6. So in a hexagon, number of parallel diagonals will be 6 into 6 minus 4, 2 by 4, it will be 3 diagonals. Number of non-parallel diagonals will be 6 into 4 by 4, non-parallel diagonals will be 6. So, and one more thing you have to observe here is, in any polygon, regular polygon having n sides as even number, there always your non-parallel diagonals, so the number of diagonals that are non-parallel to any of its sides will always be greater than the number of diagonals that are parallel to at least one of the sides, right? So why? Because you see here n by 4. Here we are having n minus 4, we are removing more bigger number from here, right? So obviously this parallel will be smaller than the non-parallel. So in this question, if you come back to this question, the number of diagonals of a regular octagon, what is octagon here? Octagon is 8 sides, right? So the number of diagonals that are parallel to at least one side. So if you know this logic, whatever logic I said later, directly you can say that your quantity B will be greater than quantity A, right? Because if number of sides is even, always number of diagonals that are not parallel to any of the sides will be greater than number of diagonals that are parallel to at least one of the sides, right? So straight away you can say answer is B, but then if you want to still calculate, we can do that. So here n is equal to, octagon is 8 sides, so n by 4 into n minus 4, this is for number of diagonals to parallel to the sides. This one will be, quantity will be n by 4 into n minus 2, right? Now see this, n is 8, 8 by 4 into 4, it will be 8 here, and n is 8, 8 by 4 into 6, this will become 12 here. So obviously quantity B is greater than quantity A. That's it, right? Now let's solve our second question. Now the question says find the number of trailing zeros in the numerical value of 60 factorial. So for this, the direct method I will tell you. See this, how you can get a zero. A zero is formed by multiplying 5 into 2, correct? 1 0 will be formed when you multiply 1 5 and 1 2. So you'll get 1 0. Always 0 will float to the end. That is the meaning of trailing zeros. Trailing zero means number of zeros at the end of a number, right? Now if you want to get 2 zeros at the end of the number, definitely you should have 2 5s, right? 2 5s and 2 2s. Only then you will get 2 zeros at the end. Now if you have 3 5s and 3 2s, you will get 3 zeros at the end. If you have 99 5s and 99 2s, you will get 99 zeros at the end. Understand? That's it. Now to find number of zeros, first of all you have to find what is your number of 5s, right? So if you take if you want to find number of 5s in n factorial, what you will do is directly 60 you divide by 5, okay? Because you are trying to find number of 5s in 60 factorial. So 60 by 5, write the quotient here. Quotient, it will be 15 12s are, right? Again you divide this 12 by 5, write the quotient here, it will be 2. Now 2 by 5, anyway 2 is less than 5, right? So you won't get any quotient, you will get the remainder as 2 itself, right? So you can say that there are 14 5s, right? So 60 factorial will have 14 5s in it. That means it will be 5 power 14. Now how will you find number of 2s in 60 factorial? Simply divide 60 by 2, you write the quotient here, you will get 30. Again this quotient you divide by 2, you will get 15 here. Again 15 you divide by 2, you will get 7 here. 7 divided by 2, you get 3 here. 3 divided by 2, you will get the quotient as 1 here. So if you add all these things, it will be 30 plus 10 40, 55 56. Though there will be 56 2s. That means power of 2 in 60 factorial will be, maximum power will be 56. That's it, okay? So here you have 2 power 56, but then since we need to get 1 0, we need a couple, right? 5 and 2 will make one couple. So maximum couples can be made, maximum number of couples we can get 5 and 2s is 14, right? So you can straight away need not calculate for 2. Why? Because looking at this itself you will understand that number of 2s will be more in 60 factorial, because 60 by 2, your quotient first quotient itself is 30, right? Which is more than 14, right? So straight away you can say you can calculate just for 5. That should be enough, right? So your answer will be 14. That means there will be 14 zeros at the end of 60 factorial. That's it. Now let's solve our next question. If 4 cubes each of 10 centimeters edge are joined end to end, then find the total surface area of the resulting solid. So there are some cubes it seems. So let us draw this way. There are some cubes like this, right? So they are joined end to end like this, right? So these cubes, there are imagine these are the cubes, they are joined end to end like this, right? So normally what is the total surface area of a cube? Whenever you take a cube, okay, just imagine a cube, what is the total surface area? A cube will have 6 faces, right? So 6 faces, each face is a square. So total surface area of a cube is 6a square. Again, I have covered everything, every detail whichever you need in mensuration, I covered them completely in geometry course, right? Now Total surface area of a cube is 6a square, right? Now see this, how many cubes are there here? We have 4 cubes. So what is the total surface area of this all these four squares? It will be, for each square total surface area is 6a square. We have 4 squares, it will be 6 4s are 24a square, correct? But then here there is a catch. See here, whenever you take, suppose take these 2 cubes, what happened is, when I take one cube and attach one more cube, when I touch them like this, what happens is, one face, this particular face is getting attached, right? So here you won't get any total surface area, correct, because they are attached, right? So that's you are hiding, whenever you club 2 cubes, you are actually hiding 2 surfaces, right? One surface from this cube is hidden, one surface from this cube is hidden. So how many times they are pasted like this? For every one pasting, 2 surfaces are gone, understand? So there is second pasting here, third pasting here. So for every so we have 3 pastings, and every pasting 2 surfaces are gone. So total 6 surfaces are gone. So minus 6a square, you will get 18a square. That's it. And what is A? A is nothing but side length, side is nothing but 10 here. So your answer will be 1800. That's it. This is your answer for this, right? So this is a better way to solve this question. Instead of calculating, instead of doing it, imagine as a cuboid, this will be better way, right? Even you can solve this imagining this as a cuboid, having this total length as 40, this length as 10, height as 10. That way also you can do it, right? Now, fourth question. Chemical X makes 8% by weight of solution A and 18% by weight of solution B. So there are 2 solutions. This is solution A and this is solution B. In this solution, what happened is, okay, there are 2 solutions like this, and in this solution, blue color solution, there is some chemical X solution. There will be many chemicals, right? So one of such chemical is X. So particular X chemical here it is 8% in this, and some X chemical here it is 18% in this. Understand? Done. Now, if 6 grams of solution A are mixed with 14 grams of solution B, what is the percentage of weight of the resultant solution is chemical X? So he is asking that when this solution is a red blue color solution, this 6 grams is taken out, so we are taking out small quantity here, and this red color one we are taking out 14 grams. Understand? So here we are taking 14 grams and here we are taking 6 grams, and these 2 solutions are mixed. Understand? These 2 solutions are mixed in a tub. Now there will be red color solution, there will be blue color solution as well. Now your target is to find, there will be chemical X here also, there will be chemical X here, there will be chemical X here, 8% chemical X here, say 18% chemical X here. Now you have to find what is the percentage of X chemical in this resultant solution. That is your target. Now see this, mixtures is very powerful concept, right? So I told you, whenever you're mixing 2 things, right, one mixture, another mixture, okay, you mix these 2 things, you will get third mixture, right? So whenever you're doing mixtures, so it will be like X shape, right? One mixture is here, one mixture is here. So always at the top you have to write the average, average 1, average 2. When you mix 2 averages, you will get one more average, that is average 3, and down you will get something called weights, okay, weights. So this base you will get as a ratio, right? So that ratio will be the ratio of the bases. Now what is an average? I told you, wherever you see a word called per, right, everywhere per is there means that is a ratio, that is a average, okay. And what is the weight here? Whenever you are having some average entry, okay, average attribute, whatever comes below the word per, that will become the weight. Understand? Suppose you take speed here, speed is nothing but a distance by time. Understand? Distance by time. So I will say 20 kilometers per hour. See the word per here. So per means that is an average, right? So you got per here, 20 kilometers per hour. So what happens is, per hour, the denominator you are having time, right? So hour. So see this, whenever you're mixing 2 speeds, okay, you will get the speed, third one also will be the average, right? And then the bottom, the weights will be ratio of time. Understand? That's it. Similarly, if you're mixing 2 profit 1, profit 2, profit is also nothing but average. Why so? Because see, if I sold something, right, I'll get a profit. So if I get a profit or loss, it is always calculated on my cost price, right? So 5 rupees out of 100. Suppose I got 20% profit, right? So what is the 20%? For every 100 rupees I spend, I got a profit of 20 rupees. That is the meaning of 20% profit, right? So whenever I mix two profit or loss things, now you can tell me what is the ratio I'll be getting at the bottom. I'll be getting the ratio of cost to price. Understand? Because your profit or loss is always calculated on the cost price itself, right? So whenever profit or loss is mixed, the ratio you get will be the cost price of the items, right? This concept will be very useful even your profit and loss concepts, right? Done. Now say this. Now your first target is to identify the percentage. See here, there is identify the average here. Here you have 8%, here you have 18%. See here, what is the meaning of percent? Percent, that means per 100. Again you see you have a word per here. So percentage is also nothing but an average. Understand? So now you take this one, blue color liquid. It is said that X is there 8% of this total liquid. So if you imagine the weight of the blue liquid is 100 grams, for every 100 grams there will be 8 grams of chemical X. That is the meaning of this one, right? So now what is the average here? You have to identify that. Average is nothing but 8%, 18% is the average. So 8%, 18% is the average. When these two are mixed, you will be getting something percent that you don't know. Now when you mix these two things, what is the ratio you will be getting here? You will be getting the weight, right? Why? Because see here, 8% by weight. So if you take 100 grams of blue liquid, there will be 8 grams of X liquid in that, right? So 8% means for every 100 grams you will have 8 grams of liquid chemical X, right? So that weight also you will get these weights, these ratios, you will get the weight of this chemical. So here 6 grams is taken out, right? So here it will be 6. First this small thing, it is 6 grams. Now another one you have taken is 14 grams, right? So since this is ratio, try to use the simplified one, right? So 2 goes 3 times, 2 goes 7 times. Finally, your ratio is got converted into average here 8, 18. You don't know what is this, okay? And this one you got as 3, 7. That's it. Your target is to find X, okay? Now, how will you find X? Simple. This middle one value will be the average, weighted average. What is weighted average? This X will be 8 into 3, 8 into 3 plus 18 into 7 by 3 plus 7. That's it. So it is a 24. It's on the 56, 5, 126 by 10. So it will be 2, 4, 5, 150 by 5, 150 by 10. You are getting 15. That means the average here, your answer for this question will be 15. That's it. Got it? So if you know mixture questions, mixture concept properly, knowing the concept is different, applying it is different, right? So first of all, you should know the concept, then you should also know how to apply and when to apply, right? That's it. Now, sum of three numbers are in the ratio 3:2:5. The sum of three numbers in the ratio 3:2:5, and sum of their squares. Okay, sorry. It is the question is the three numbers. There are three numbers in the ratio 3:2:5. Sum of their squares is. So let us take the numbers as 3x, 2x, 5x. Now what is the sum of their squares? It will be 9x square plus 4x square plus 25x square. This gives you 13x square plus 25x square. This gives you 38x square. This is given as 1862. So x square will be 1862 by 38. X will be root of 1862 by 38. Use calculator here, right? Use calculator here. 1862 by 38, you're getting 49. Root 49 is nothing but 7. That's it. So your x value is 7. You are asked to find the the smallest of these numbers. Smallest of these numbers will be 2x. So 2x is nothing but 14. That's it. So answer will be 14 for this, right? Only important thing is when you consider x here, so 3:2:5 is the ratio, whereas 3x, 2x, 5x are actual numbers, right? Actually, I have repeated many times what is the meaning of a ratio, what is the meaning of value, right? So that everyone must know the basic difference between ratio and value, right? Now, let us solve our 7th question. Again, this question I have explained in our geometry course, right? And before explaining this question, I have explained a lot of concepts. So the way the course, geometry course is made is, first of all, concept is explained, then based on that concept there will be many questions where we use this concept and solve. So concept and the application both goes hand in hand, right? So that way you complete your geometry course is a complete thing, having concept as well as application part, right? Now see this, let us solve this question. Your question mark, you need to find what is the area of this question mark, red color one, right? So here you need to draw a construction. The reason also I will be telling you, see this, if you draw a construction like this, okay, just draw these constructions. Now see this, you draw constructions like this, done. See this, let this area be x, okay, let this area, this blue area be x, and now this will be 20 minus x, correct? 20 minus x. Why? Because total is 20. 20 minus x, done. Now 20 minus x, done. Now here one thing you have to observe, if you take this triangle, this vertices triangle, see this vertices triangle, let it be A, B, C. I have explained this concept in detail. We covered many questions on this topic. If you have a triangle like this and a line is separating the triangle in two parts, now your area, right, if this is a BD, area of this triangle ABD and ADC will depend on BD and DC, right? Why? Because height of the triangles ABD and ADC will be one and the same. Why? Because see here, when this line AD divides the triangle ABC into two triangles, one will be acute triangle, one will be obtuse triangle. So here ADC is acute triangle, ADB is obtuse triangle. So in an acute triangle always height will be inside, in an obtuse triangle like this height will be outside, right? So extend the base, draw a perpendicular from third vertex onto the extended base, you will get the height of an obtuse angle triangle. Here the height will be something like this, okay? This will be the height. Height is common for both ADC triangle, ABD triangle also. So your area of base into height, it depends only on the base ratio. Understand? If you see here, what is the meaning of this double dash? That means they are bisected equally. Understand? So it is 1:1. If this is 1, this is 1, this area of this part will be 20 minus x, done. Now total area, you know, it is 16 here. So this particular red color one, this one will be 16 minus 20 minus x, right? So it will be x minus 4. So this area will be x minus 4. That's it. If this is x minus 4, this area will also be x minus 4. Why? Because if you take this black triangle, right, this line is dividing the triangle into two equal halves, x minus 4, done. Now see this, take this triangle A, D, let it be D, C. If you take this triangle, if this is x means this also will be x, and this part will be 32 minus x, right? Now you take this triangle, this one, this vertex, this vertex. This is 32 minus x means this also will be 32 minus x, done. Now what is the area of this red color one? It will be x minus 4 plus 32 minus x. Minus x plus x cancel, you will have 28. That's it. So 28 will be your answer for this question, right? Now you can have a shortcut as well for this. Your shortcut also explained in that video. So the shortcut here is simple. Your area will be, if this is x, okay, your area will be 20 plus x is equal to 16 plus 32. It will be 48. This will be 20 plus x is equal to 48. X will be 48 minus 20, it will be 28. Even this way you can get your answer, right? So I showed you both methods, the actual procedure and then shortcut as well, right? Done. Now see this, let us solve our next question. 7th one done. 8th one. When n is divided by 19, the remainder is 6. So when n is divided by 19, so there is some number that is divided by 19. So suppose 19 is there, n is there, it is divided by 19. There will be some quotient, let it be a, right? So there will be something here and then remainder is given 6. You know that dividend is equal to divisor into quotient plus remainder, right? Suppose you take this one 14, 17. Suppose if I take 17, if I take my number as 17, if I divide by 4, what happens here? Quotient will be 4, remainder will be 1, right? So how can I get back my actual number? divisor into quotient plus remainder will give you 17 itself. 4 into 4 16 plus 1 17, right? So similarly, a number n is divided by 19, so remainder is 6. So you can write your number n as 19a plus 6. Understand what is this a? It is nothing but some quotient, okay, and this is remainder. So you can write your n as 19a plus 6, right? Done. Now when n is divided by 11, quotient is equal to z. Now n is divided by 11, so now you can write n. So now you know what is n here. N is nothing but 19a plus 6. So 19a plus 6 when divided by 11, your quotient is equal to z. So you can write it as, see here, so 19a plus 6 can be written as 11 into z plus remainder is 6. Understand? You can write it like this, right? So one and the same, right? Now then z must be divisible by which of the following numbers? See this. Now 6 and 6 will get cancelled, right? Now you can write z is equal to 19a by 11, right? So what is happening is, here you see here z is equal to 19 into a by 11. So this z is nothing but a multiple of 19. Understand? A multiple of 19. So it need not actually be divisible by it is that there will be at least this z must be divisible by which number, right? Divisible means what? Suppose if I say 14 is divisible by which number? I can say 7. Why? Because 7 into 2 is nothing but 14. So you can say 14 is divisible by 7. 14 is also divisible by 2, because you are able to write in multiplication, right? Similarly, see here, your z is divisible by 19. This you can say for sure, because 19 into a by 11. You don't know what is actually a by 11, right? So if this a can be anything. If this a is 11, it will be 1, right? So z is divisible by 11 also. If this is some 22, this 11 cancels 2 times, and you can say even your z is divisible by 2, right? But it depends on the value of a. But for sure what you can say is z is at least divisible by 19, because you are able to write z in terms of product of 19 into something. Here this need not necessarily, a by 11 need not necessarily be integral value. It can be decimal also, right? It varies. Suppose if a is 1, it will be 1 by 11, which is 9.09. So 19 into 9.09 will be z itself, right? So that way for sure you can say your z will be divisible by 19. That's it. Now a man and a boy can complete a work together in 24 days. For the last 6 days, man alone does the work, then it is completed in 26 days. How long the boy will take to complete the work alone? Right? See this, a man and a boy can finish a work in 24 days. So what I will do is, I will assume my total work as 24. Understand? I will assume my total work as 24. See here, a man and a boy can complete a work in 24 days. So I'll assume my total work is also 24 units. So from this what you can say, the efficiency of man plus boy is nothing but 1 unit per day, right? 1 unit per day. This is the total work, this is the total time. So your efficiency is nothing but total work by total time will give you the efficiency. Efficiency is nothing but work done per day, or efficiency is nothing but work done per hour, anything like that, right? If you observe here closely, your efficiency is also an average. So whenever you are using in mixtures, be careful. Whenever you are mixing two efficiencies, you can do that. Why? Because efficiency is also a ratio. Sorry, efficiency is also an average, right? As I told you, all averages can be mixed. Understand? And the ratio we get the below will be the weights. So now you can answer me, what happens if I mix two efficiencies? Like let this first efficiency be 12 hours per day, and second efficiency be 24 hours per day. When I mix them, the bottom ratio I'll get days ratio. Understand? That's it. Now what happened is, efficiency of man plus boy is nothing but 1 unit per day. It is said that for the last 6 days man alone worked. So So total work is completed in 26 days. That's what he is saying. Total work is done in 26 days, and last 6 days only man worked. So that means 20 days a man and boy worked, right? So in 20 days how much work they will finish? In one day they can finish 1 unit. In 20 days they will finish 20 units, right? 20 units they finished. So here in last 6 days a man finished 4 units. That is the meaning of this. So what is the efficiency of man here? Efficiency of man is nothing but total work by total time. What is the work he did here? 4 units. What is the time he took? 6 days. So it will be 2 by 3. So efficiency of man is 2 by 3. What is the efficiency of the boy? You know, efficiency of man plus boy is 1 here. Man efficiency is 2 by 3. So boy efficiency will be 1 by 3, right? 1 minus 2 by 3 will give you 1 by 3. So efficiency of the boy is nothing but 1 by 3, right? Now you are asked to find how long will the boy take to complete the whole work. What is the total work here? 24 units. Total work by efficiency will give you total time, correct? See here, 24 units, and this is 1 by 3 units per day. When you do divide this one, units cancel, days will go above, you will get 72 days. That's it. So total time is nothing but 72 days, right? Now let us solve our 10th question. X is a positive integer less than 100. When x is divided by 5, the remainder is 4. When x is divided by 23, the remainder is 7. What is the value of x? Now see here, this is very important concept and very conceptual question, right? See this, x is a positive integer less than 100. When x is divided by 5, remainder is 4. So what you can write as, your x is equal to 5a plus 4. Understand? A is nothing but the quotient here. This is remainder here, right? So all remainder questions, mind you, all remainder questions are having an arithmetic progression hidden in them, right? So every remainder question can be interpreted in a second way. What is the second way? Every remainder question is having an arithmetic progression. They will follow a arithmetic series. So here if you see, x is equal to 5a plus 4. What is this for? This is nothing but the first term, right? That is a. In arithmetic progression you will have the first term that will be denoted by a, and 5 is nothing but, this is actually divisor. This divisor is also equal to, or this divisor is nothing but common difference in an arithmetic progression. So 5a plus 4, this one you can write as, your first term will be 4, next term will be 9. Why? Because common difference is 5. So common difference is 5 means next term will differ by a value of 5. So this will be 5. Your next term will be 14, right? Your next term will be 19, next term will be 24, next term will be 29, and so on, right? Somewhere you will get the value of x. The x can be anything. If a is 0, your x will be 4. If a is 1, your x value will be 9. A is 2, your x value will be 14, and so on. So this interpretation of remainder problems in arithmetic progression is very important. This is the main concept, right? Now see this again. When x is divided by 23, remainder is 7. So you can also write x is equal to 23b plus 7. Understand? What is this b here? Some random quotient again, and this is remainder. So what is your arithmetic series? Your first term will be 7, next term will be 30 because the difference is 23, right? What is your next term again? It will be 53. Next term again it will be 23. If you add 76, next term if you do, it will be 99, right? So the number goes on like this endlessly, but then you are asked to find x is a positive integer less than 100. So don't go beyond this, right? Done. Now see this here. Here if you see, your x can be 4, x can be 9, x can be 14, anything, but you are asked to find what is the value of x less than 100. So that x must satisfy this equation, x must satisfy this equation also. So what is your next term here? It will be 34, next term will be 39, again 44, 49. If you see here 54, next term will be 59, 64, 69, 74, 79. Very easy, right? You can actually do this. If you keep on adding 5s, you will get only 4s and 9s, right? 84, 89, 94, 99. See here, the first term which is matching will be the least possible value. of x which satisfies both the conditions. That's it. Now one more thing you have to know here, the question can be made even more difficult, like they can give n number of conditions, right? Here it is said that x is less than 100, but if they may ask you least or maximum 3-digit number, or it can x can be the largest 3-digit number, x can be like that, right? Any condition they can give you. Here they said the condition given for x is less than 100, but then to make it difficult they can also say x is the largest 3-digit number, right? So in that case what happens is, again these two series will club together and form one more new series, that is x is equal to 99. Okay, your first term is 99 plus LCM of, okay, LCM of 5 and 23, right? That will be the common difference. So again your next term will be 99 and the next term will be the LCM of 27 and 5. It will be 5 3 is 15, 10, 115. LCM will be 115. So your series, actual series will go like this: 99 plus 115C. That's it. So when your C is 0, your first term will be 99. When your C is equal to 1, your next term will be 115 plus 99. You will get the second number, right? So based on this condition, you can find any number, right? So this question is very conceptual. If they want to make it real tough, they can make it as tough as they can, but then if you know this concept, you will be able to crack the question in seconds, right? This question seems to be very tough, but then hardly it is solvable in less than 30 seconds. That's it. Okay, so your answer for this question will be 99. Only 99 is the number which is less than 100, satisfying both the conditions. What are the conditions? When divided by 5, remainder should be 4. When divided by 23, remainder will be 7. If you want, you can check it. 99 divided by 5, remainder will be 4. 99 divided by 23, again remainder will be 7. If you want, you can divide and check it. Okay, done. So we are done till 10 questions. So remaining 10 questions we will be doing in the part 2, right? Thank you.